Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's video, we are taking a look at these GOOSYNN TiFi R50 wheels. We are currently living in the third generation of carbon spoked wheels. Craft Racing Works basically started this trend, and now everything feels more or less the same. All wheels that you can buy currently on the market today are pretty good. So it's awesome to finally have a set of wheels in hand that are very much different than all of the different carbon spoke wheels that I have reviewed on this channel over the past few years. So in this video on these GOOSYNN wheels, we're going to be talking about the specs. Of course, we're going to be talking about the uniqueness of the spokes because that is the critical area to these wheels. We're going to get these bad boys weighed out, talk about the pros and cons of the wheels, and then of course my overall thoughts on these wheels. Now, full disclosure, Joe from Panda Podium, he did send me out these wheels to review, and I will link Panda Podium's site down below in the description area. And also too, and this point is kind of important, might be kind of quirky as well, but I intentionally did not watch any of the other YouTubers who have featured these wheels, basically preventing myself from having any further bias on these wheels. And even when Joe sent me out these wheels, he basically gave me no information on these wheels at all other than the fact that they had braided spokes. He basically just told me, just go out, ride these wheels for a few months, and then offer up some feedback and your thoughts. Once you do that, then I'll give you some of the more technical information on what these wheels are all about. And at this point in time, I have now ridden these wheels for about 3 months or so. So anyway, let's go ahead and get into the wheels. So these are, like I said at the intro, these are the GOOSYNN TiFi R50 wheels. The early bird price on these wheels is $2,099 USD. So obviously not on the more budget side of things when it comes to wheels, but these are a very unique set of wheels. Now, included with these wheels and how they're built, they use what is called the TiFi Polymer braided spokes. The depth on the rims is 50 millimeters, both front and rear. You have a 25 millimeter internal width, and they are hooked. External width on these is 34 millimeters, and it uses a zero coating finish on the rims themselves. It also has some of the other usual affairs as well, like ceramic bearings, has a 36 tooth star ratchet hub, and then the max rider weight on these is 85 kilograms. So if you are a super heavyweight sprinter or like a track racer, these aren't going to be the wheels for you. But I did speak to Joe from Panda Podium, and I do believe that GOOSYNN at some point in time will come out with a more heavier weight version of these wheels. So what is the highlight of these wheels? Why are these wheels so interesting to have here on the channel? Where GOOSYNN uses TiFi spokes, and these TiFi spokes are the lightest spokes in the world, coming in at like 2.2 grams each. So you might be asking, what exactly is TiFi? Well, basically that just means titanium and fiber together. Titanium being light yet very strong. In fact, the fibers have roughly 5 to 6 times the strength of like a steel cable. I'm not an engineer, but this is just the information that I've received based on these wheels. So we're not going to go into all the super technical aspects of these wheels, but just know that these wheels have braided spokes and that titanium is very light, yet also is very strong. So what does all this mean then as far as these braided spokes on these GOOSYNN wheels? Well, braided spokes, they have significantly more elasticity than both carbon spokes as well as steel spokes. So what this means is this allows the rim to deform more independently of the hub, leading to a more comfortable ride, a very comfortable ride, which we'll discuss later in this video. And so this is why you're starting to see a lot more of both gravel wheels and mountain bike wheels using braided spokes because they offer up that elasticity in the spokes, which allows the wheels and the overall riding dynamics to be very comfortable. Now, of course, going with these braided spokes, it's not without its flaws, particularly when it comes to lateral stiffness. But again, it's all about in the name of comfort. Let's just cut to the chase right now. I won't even bother singing this song, but if you don't know who Billy Ocean is with the hit banger Caribbean Queen, just go ahead and unsubscribe to my YouTube channel right now. But anyway, let's go ahead and weigh out these GOOSYNN TiFi 50 wheels or R50 wheels, about 33 millimeters external, 25 internal. Then we have these polymer braided spokes, DT Swiss style ratchet hub design. So for the front wheel, we have 661 grams, 661 grams. That's for the rear wheel. And then for the front wheel, we have 554 grams, which gives us a grand total for 1,215 grams. So let's continue. And then speaking of comfort, how do these feel out on the road? Well, as a starter, these wheels feel absolutely amazing. Quite frankly, these are the best set of wheels I have ever featured on this channel when it comes to comfort. I've also noticed too is these wheels are fantastic in the crosswinds. You can imagine because since the spokes are round rather than some sort of carbon aero bladed spokes, literally these are fantastic in the crosswinds. In fact, on one of my rides over the last 3 months, I did a 2-hour out and back where we had like 25 mile an hour / 40-kilometer straight crosswinds and total control, even on my SL8. Very, very manageable. And yet, despite the fact of having these crazy strong crosswinds, I was still able to manage my typical average speeds based on the typical zone 2 power output that I would expect. So again, you're getting a lot of comfort with these wheels as well as you're getting stability in the crosswinds. Another thing I noticed with these wheels too is just how easy they are to accelerate, which makes them really good on climbs. Now, the vertical stiffness of these are good, assuming you're not going over some crazy bumps. But somehow it's still able to, with these wheels, they're just able to really destroy all harshness from the roads. Again, I'm just really shocked and impressed of how comfortable these wheels are and how good they have been so far in the crosswinds. This is no exaggeration. There's a lot of comfort that comes with these wheels. Now, another thing I want to point out is just how these sort of spokes kind of act out in the real world. So you can imagine because there's so much elasticity in these spokes, they basically kind of act like a spring. So when you are like, say, in the power phase of the pedaling stroke, you're under load. And then once that spring gets loaded, it kind of snaps back into place. And so it kind of helps even out some of the dead spaces throughout the pedaling stroke or the pedaling revolution. And so that extra kick or the extra spring that come with these spokes really kind of helps you get through the finale of that pedaling stroke. I don't even know why I'm talking about pedaling stroke here. I'm not an engineer. I just ride my bike. Another thing I want to talk about too is the spokes and just the overall wheels themselves. They are flexy. They're not stiff, but these spokes are very strong. They're not going to break. And even if you were to touch them in hand, they might flex a little bit, but they're definitely not going to break. Again, these are part titanium and other fibers as well. And so the tensile strength of these spokes are about the same as carbon spokes. Now, there is one thing I do want to mention about carbon spokes. So for a forever set of wheels, obviously my preference is carbon, particularly carbon aero bladed spokes. But one thing there is to note about carbon spokes, especially when you get to the higher speeds, say like 30 miles an hour or faster, the road feedback that you get from carbon spokes becomes exponential. And so some people prefer this riding sensation, especially like myself, because I do like to have a lot of feedback in my wheels, especially in my frames, which is why I like stiffer frames. But other people may not like that sensation. And so the only way you're able to really mitigate that exponential road feedback is by going with wider and preferably tubeless tires. And this is where braided spokes become a fantastic option. So I've ran these wheels with a couple of different tire setups. In one instance, or for 1 month, I ran 28C GP5000s with TPU intertubes. And it felt like out on the road, it felt like I was running like 32C tubeless tires. They were just that comfortable. All the road buzz, vibrations, and harshness, all of that was just completely obliterated. And then I also ran these wheels with a set of 30C tubeless tires, and the comfort on these are just next level. And you can imagine with my Tarmac SL8, that frame set already being comfortable. So pairing that frame set with these wheels and with tubeless tires at 30C, just sublime comfort. You can basically just ride all day, no diddy, and just be very comfortable, and you won't be beat up at the end of the ride. One of the other sensations that comes with these wheels paired to my Tarmac SL8 is it's kind of reminiscent of my latest Bossy Strada SS titanium frame set. This is sort of what these wheels kind of do. They don't fully replace that of a titanium frame set, but they just help really mitigate so much road vibrations and harshness that you get out on your everyday roads. So what are the downsides to these wheels? We know that these wheels are super comfortable. They're fantastic in the crosswinds. So what are some of the trade-offs that you might get with these wheels? Well, price might be a big factor for some of you guys at basically $2,099 USD. These wheels aren't cheap, but they are very unique. But the main downside to these wheels is they aren't super stiff laterally. Now, I do know that this is one area that other people have reported on these wheels, but thankfully they're nowhere as bad as, say, those Elite Drive Velo 6 wheels. With those wheels, I was basically able to touch the rim to either side of the fork or the chainstays because they were just that much of a noodle when it came to lateral stiffness. For these, I actually didn't experience any sort of disc rubbing or anything like that. But again, for those heavier riders, especially those who are closer to that 85 kilogram weight limit, you will more or less notice the lack of stiffness on these wheels when it comes to lateral movement. So again, these wheels aren't exactly stiff at all. And what I've noticed too is just our brains are really bad at really recognizing these torsional stiffness and then just other sensations as well. So then because these wheels are not stiff laterally, what does this mean in everyday riding in the real world? Well, if you're going to be doing some crit races or road races or for your fast group rides, these probably are not going to be the wheels to use for that. And truthfully, if you only have one set of wheels to use for life, these aren't going to be that. These are definitely a more extra credit set of wheels. But yeah, for your faster rides, your harder efforts, especially when you're cornering or you're descending down some mountains or hills, these probably are not going to be the wheels for those applications. Freehub sound test on these GOOSYNN or GOOSYNN TiFi R50 wheels with the 36 tooth star ratchet design. Before we begin, I do want to make note of two things. So number one is I did not have to make any caliper or rotor alignment adjustments, swapping in these wheels from a previous set of wheels using a very similar style of DT Swiss ratchet design. So shout out to these OEM component suppliers for getting the tolerances on their hubs correct. And the second thing I do want to mention is I am using a set of Continental GP5000 tubeless tires, although I am running TPU inner tubes for demonstration purposes. But for some reason, this rear tire is kind of wonky. So if you see any wobbles on this Freehub test, just know that it's simply because of this tire, not the wheels themselves. That is pretty quiet if you ask me. Very quiet and very smooth. So let's continue. But the good thing is what they lack in stiffness, they more than make up in overall comfort as well as crosswind stability. The wheels are super light, again, coming in at 1,215 grams at a 50 millimeter deep wheel. These are among some of the lightest wheels I have ever featured on this channel. And I've been very fortunate to feature a lot of wheels more recently that have been very, very light for the respective rim depth. And so for these wheels, you're getting a modern rim width. You're getting a star ratchet hub, basically like a DT Swiss hub. And then just the overall uniqueness that come with a set of wheels that are using these braided spokes in a sea of other wheels that are using the standard carbon spoke wheels or even like the steel spoke wheels as well. Who exactly then are these wheels for? What would be the purpose of these wheels? Well, in my own personal case, these wheels would be a perfect set of wheels for long endurance rides on crappy weather or in the winter time. Or maybe your frame just does not allow for the tire clearance of like a 32 or 34C tire, whether you're running those with tubes or tubeless. And so you're just looking for that extra comfort that would typically come with a wider tire. This is a fantastic way to have basically the same experience where you want to mitigate some of that road vibrations and harshness from the road. You're able to do all of that basically by still using a 28C tire, mainly because, or just simply I should say, because of how these wheels are set up. Again, those TiFi braided spokes, they do so much with adding comfort to your overall ride, and they really change dynamically how your bike feels in terms of just the added comfort that it offers. I also think that these wheels would be good for someone who is maybe on the mid to lighter side of the weight scale, or if you live in an area that can be potentially pretty windy like Chicago in my case. And so yeah, these wheels will make a lot of sense for long days out in the countryside or even multi-day bike packing. As long as you can keep the overall system weight of both the wheels and the bike down to below 100 kilograms. So that's basically it, guys. Been using these wheels for 3 months now. They've been fantastic. They have been so comfortable on the days when I'm doing recovery or zone 2 rides. They just work really well for what they are. Again, they're not going to be your race day wheel, but for all the other people out there, especially if you're someone who are just more on the recreational side or you're a weekend warrior, these are going to be a really good second option for a set of wheels. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys. A huge shout out to Panda Podium for sending me out these wheels. And now that the weather here is lovely here in Chicago, I will continue to use these wheels and give you guys further updates as we get further into the season. Questions, comments, and concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. And I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.